So we were going to focus on ZvT today, right?
Yep.
Awesome. I'm just getting back on my main account because I was like, "Where's Neuro? Shouldn't he be on my friends list?"
Are we not friends?
Star-Lord doesn't have any friends. They're still angry about him fucking up them killing Thanos in the first movie. um.
Spoilers.
Yes. All right, there we go. So rough plan. Opening. And tweaks and decisions and adjustments, right? For being a little bit further ahead when you can, and being like, so basically being greedier when we can and being safer when we need to, right? That was like kind of a big focus, if I remember correctly, for what you wanted to kind of work on, to kind of be a bit more flexible rather than just doing the same thing every game.
Yeah, the issue that I think I tend to have is if I don't know my opponent's strength, either being bio or mech, I don't really feel like I can flex relative to the branch that they take in a way that I feel like I get ahead.
Mm.
And I think a lot of
Yep.
that is the feeling of the Roach Warren versus the Baneling Nest. It feels like if I choose one and it works out with the right path, I feel really confident and ahead. And if not, then I feel like I'm kind of scrambling to catch up to that game plan.
Yes. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Should we look at a replay quickly while we?
Yeah, I got a game against Riddler that I think is a good example because he's the kind of player who can do bio or mech really well, which means I can't really metagame him of just, it's a mech player, go Roach Warren, or it's a bio player, go Bane Nest. I feel like I have
Yeah.
to be really on top of it.
Oh, you made me the party leader. Can you make me the lobby host by right-clicking me in the lobby, and then I can steer. Sorry, Neuro, but I don't want no long-haired hippie driving my vehicle. I am a olden-fashioned man, and I need to be in control at all times. All right, I need to be driving. I am so confident that I don't feel comfortable with someone else driving the replay.
Wow.
So confident.
I'm
Shows
glad
how
you,
confident you are.
I'm glad
when
that you
you're
got to express yourself there.
not comfortable being vulnerable is just a way of showing how awesome you are. It's part of my life goal. I got tricked by his clan tag the other day. I normally don't. I misread it and I was like, oh, it's real Avillo. Then he proxy reaped me, TVT, and I died.
One of the beautiful things about StarCraft, I think, is you can tell who the player is oftentimes just by how they play.
Oh yeah.
I think that's pretty
That's why that No Regret tournament was so cool. I didn't get to watch too much of it, but what was it called? Like the one where basically they didn't show the players' names at all? Anonymous? Is that what it's called? Something like that?
Yeah, and if you get eliminated, then it reveals who you were.
Yeah. And then the winner never gets revealed. So it's always a mystery to some extent. That was awesome. All right. Guys, thank you in chat for hanging out. If you all have questions, feel free to ask them. We won't always be paying attention. Me and Neuro are going to be locked into a discourse. But if you feel it's a good question or you really are keen, hang on to it and try it again later when we both are actually looking at our chats a little bit more. And we will obviously try to come back to those where we can. Very quickly before we dive into it, yes, you lose your GM border if you get knocked out of GM. However, you can get GM with every different MMR on your account, depending on that. You also will lose GM if you don't play 35 games every 2 weeks, I believe is the count. Another question, info on hotkey setup. Me and Neuro both use the core, which if you type !core in my chat, you can find out more info about. It's very advanced setup, which I recommend to hardcore gamers who really like efficiency and are good at learning. Otherwise, I don't recommend it to most players because it's a big learning process. Once you get set up with it, it's amazing. But for most people, they're not methodical enough to learn it. I'd say if you're one of the 10% of players who's a real hardcore learner, you're someone who's already knows how to use things like programming languages, or you're just good at learning skills that aren't super intuitive, you will get it a lot quicker than most people. All right. So what's your current game plan? You're going OV speed this game. Is that your standard, or are you kind of wishy-washy, half-off with it?
Yeah, that's part of the reason I reached out to you is I have a few different builds that have been in my history that I've trained. There's one where you pull fully off gas and take a fast third. That was like the counter to 2-1-1. And then there's the Overlord speed build that was kind of the Lambo guide for a while. And there's a layer roach.
When you said pull off gas, did you mean like not even get ling speed, or do you mean just after ling speed pull off gas?
Speed.
Okay. Yeah. And you said there was a Lambo gas, or what?
Yeah, it's the Lambo Ling Speed Overlord Speed third base opening. That was like what we were doing a year ago, I think. And then there's a 340 Bane Nest with a lair, and then there's a Roach opening.
And then there's a Roach. Yeah, so many different openings. Hey, when you've got so many, it's really hard to be tight on them, especially because ZvT is so tempo focused, right? And if one guy is just a little bit more fancy with his Reaper, we suddenly have to start reacting a bit more within it, and that sort of stuff. So I would definitely think it's good to lock down one for consistency for the first 3 minutes 30, 4 minutes. I always tend towards non-OV speed openings. I think Roach openings are still good. As long as we don't lock ourselves into mass Roach, if that's not our game plan. You're a Hydra Bane guy in the mid game, right? If it's bio?
Sometimes. Again, another point of inconsistency. Sometimes I do Hydra Ling Bane, sometimes I do Ling Bane Muta, sometimes Ling Bane Corruptor, sometimes mixing an Infestor.
Occasionally Corruptors. Alright. Are you ever playing Mass Roach? Say you do a Roach opening and they're playing Bio, do you ever try to play like Mass Roach or Mass Roach Hydra, or is that just kind of like super rare?
I play Mass Roach this game. This was a Carapace into ranged attack opening that I've done quite a few times, where you go Ling Roach Ravager and try to max out really fast, and he ends up doing a bunch of multitasking to kind of pick me apart. But I think if we're looking at a basic principle of how I would like to play ZvT, my goal is generally to take a worker lead and to be able to defend myself, so I don't really want to cut corners too much and take risks. I'd rather play steady. And then I want to be moving up the tech tree consistently, because what initially motivated me to reach out to you was the series I played against Cuddlebear, I think. And you casted that right after doing a bunch of analysis, and you were pointing out a bunch of different mistakes. And the one that I think was the loudest was I would just stop teching up for periods of the game, and mainly that's because I didn't know how I should progress. Like, just a solid progression in the matchup where I can make small adjustments to what the opponent is doing, rather than at the start of the game I have no idea what I'm doing, and I get a little bit of information, and then I just pick something random from my repertoire.
Yeah, and this is a common thing with a lot of different Zerg players, where so many games are decided in the mid game, and sometimes we get stuck there and we give up advantages in the mid game, right? That we earn advantages for ourselves, but then because we don't tech up to the next stage, and we just kind of like keep making Ravages and Banelings or something like real mid game compositions. I see it a lot with Zerg players in ZvP, where they're kind of going, okay, we're going to open defensive Roaches and build quite a few of them, but then we're going to try to swap back into Hydra Bane, but then we're still building Roaches because there's some pressure, and then 16 minutes into the game we're still building a mix of Roach, Hydra, Baneling, Zergling, and it's this like awkward hodgepodge, and there's no infestation pit even started. Hive is infinitely far away, and you're kind of like, yeah, well, you know, the Protoss has 8 High Templar on maxed energy and 8 Immortals and 6 Archons, and let's see how our army does versus that, you know? Like, there's always that point where up until that point it was a good army, and then your opponent has 12 siege tanks, and you really wish you didn't have any Roaches in your army, and you really wish you had Broodlords, because that would just hit such a power spike where it would just win the game. So I guess thinking about, okay, some generic paths, from what you've said, we do want to choose the standard opening, right, where we stick really tight on one and focus on consistency a little bit more, because you've had so much variation, time to pull it back a little bit. The other thing will be, like you said, having that nice clear tech path, right? So part of the whole consistently teching up the tree is, even when we're playing reactive macro, we want to still have finishing blows worked in there, right? Potential push timings, ways to do damage. ZvT, the way you're going to be playing, basically that's going to consist of a mid-game finishing blow, often after you crush an attack, right? It's like, oh, we managed to crush some sort of move out from him or some attack when he stepped on creep, and then we can kind of commit across the map and try to finish him off. But the more consistent finishing blow is always the Broodlords, I find. You can go Ultras, but I think Broodlords is just this ultimate, like, absolutely just devastating finishing blow. They're so hard for Terrans to deal with. They require so much more tech and progression. Whereas a low tech Terran can kind of drag it out. So I feel like if we can just kind of go like, okay, you line up the Hive and Spire, you build your 7 Corruptors while the Greater Spire is making, you make 7 Broodlords, you push with them. It's such a reliable way to finish the game. You know, if they haven't had a chance to get out 8 Ghosts with a ton of energy or plus a few Vikings, you're just going to roll over them with that. So does the Broodlord finish? I know you've tended towards Ultras in the past. Is that something I can shift you towards?
I'm open to the idea of Broodlords. The thing that I think I'm lacking is the initiative to make that fast. I have noticed that it can be really decisive. It can also be a really good way to throw if you make too many Broodlords and you lose your supporting units and they scout your Broodlord push. Because I've lost some games where I go for like 13 Broodlords and I have a few Queens, but I don't have Corruptors to contest Vikings. So the 7 isn't a number that I really had. It sounds like a number that you would use after Hydrabane in ZvP.
Yeah, and we'd be rallying Corruptors behind that as well. And obviously it might be 6, it might be 10 Broodlords, but usually it's probably going to be in that 6 to 8 range, where that's kind of the amount of money you'll have, right? In terms of gas usually being the limiting factor. And you're also going to pull every single Queen to your army when you push with that. If we want inspiring VODs, check Raynor in GSL last year. Some really beautiful play. And we can add a few Infestors as well. Potentially, that's like a real advanced step. So this is something we don't need to worry about for now. That's like the advanced bonus thing. But basically, if we pull every single Queen to our army, you do the same manual injecting as me, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Just boxing your Queens off things. So you can just rebuild 3 Queens, right? You know, you just grab your 3 Queens, throw them into your army, and as you're grabbing them, it's like box the Queen, add to army, click, layer, build a Queen. Go to your natural, box the Queen, click it, build another Queen, third base, so on and so forth. And that can be huge, right? Because then you just get those Queens plus, say, hopefully you've still got 3 or 4 creep Queens with lots of energy. And then you just have so much transfuse on your Broodlords, and Corruptors rally in as well. And that just cleanses your opponent's force. Do you have a separate control group for your Broodlords? You do, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so that's a nice finishing blow to have in the back of our head. That's obviously like the icing on top of the cake, the cherry on top of the cake. It's the thing which is going to usually work quite easily once we get a bit of practice with it, if the rest of the game is smooth, right? It's like the way to just say, cool, your tanks are no longer the dominating units that they were before. Neither are your Widow Mines. The rest of my army becomes much more powerful because of that. I can win the game as long as we've maintained some level of control, right? And we're in that position. So I think that'll be pretty cool. Mid-game finishing blow is just crushing with the mid-game army. I'm not going to define that anymore. I'll leave that to you. In a different matchup, I would have a lot more timing attacks listed in here, and you can definitely add your own little variations and timings off the same opening, like little branches, just so you've still got that flexibility and, you know, you don't get bored of doing the same thing every game, right? We always need a bit of variation, so we don't find the game boring and uninspiring. I guess that brings us to, let's define the opening that you want to stick with and decide, do we go the super heavy Queen approach with, you know, not super fast Banelings, but Banelings added in at some point and generally be like a real just Queen Zergling build up? Do we go the defensive Roaches every game? And I think before we answer that question, let's talk about centering on a core mid-game composition, and we can kind of set it as a goal for you for the next 2 weeks or so to really focus on that mid-game comp. I don't think it matters too much in the long run if you seesaw between Hydras and Mutas, but I think in the short term, when you're trying to get some results off of changing up your opening and trying to be more solid and more controlled in your opening, I think it'll just give you like way quicker results, and it'll be a bit more motivating if we say, okay, it's Hydra Ling Bane or it's Muta Ling Bane every game or something like that. So what's the funner composition for you, the one you're more inspired by?
I was surprised that you said the more fun, because I was going to say that Hydra is the unit that feels more robust and less exploitable, but Muta is the unit that's more fun to play. And it doesn't
I reckon
need
we
to be...
stick with...
What?
I reckon we stick with the fun unit.
Okay.
That's usually my way of applying it. As long as you don't feel afraid. Like if you're like, this unit's fun, but I have zero faith in it, then maybe we go with the Hydras. But as long as you've got a bit of faith, I think we can probably work on it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, Link Made Mute as a style I've done quite a bit. I think the issue is having the flexibility in the current meta of knowing how to be opening up so that you're safe and you really get that strong economy, because it is a pretty expensive style. You're taking all your gases and stuff like that. And then another question would be Mutaflux and Spire upgrades and how much you commit to the mutas as opposed to use the mutas to distract and harass while you're teching up into that Broodlord push. Because one thing that I've seen when I study Sue, from like Elimi League replays and stuff, is he'll oftentimes open up with a Spire and just go for somewhere between 6 and 8 mutas and just be obnoxious as he drones up everything and gets a super strong macro setup. So what did you have?
That's something, yeah. That's such a good question, right? Because so many of us we want to do that Heart of the Swarm style. People are like, we get stuck in that mindset of like, oh, I just want to do Heart of the Swarm. I want to make 30 Mutalisks, minimal Lingbane, real map control focus. It's harder to have that. You can still get there if you have the momentum. I would say, I always like to have the default and then you have a variation, right? So I think the default would be somewhere between, I would say 8 to 14 meters, right? Probably a little bit higher than Sue, so that we can have a little bit more of the ability to actually snap medevacs, whereas you have 8 and it takes a while to kill a medevac, especially if they get an armor upgrade. Default 8 to 4 meters, 8 to 14 meters, and +1 air weapons is what I'd go for. And the thing is, if you're getting momentum and stuff, or if you start tailoring your build to really rush the Spire, we can like always go non-stop meter production, more or less, like really go up to 25, 30 meters, really do counterattacks and backstabs and stuff. And then within that style, you'd be like, oh, but I played a player who got 2 Thors really early and started massing turrets on 3 base. And I actually decided to change it up. And even though my normal is mass mutas, I stopped at 14 mutas and I like even canceled my +1 and I just went straight to Hive because I realized this player was not going to let me do damage. I wasn't getting any momentum, but I'd clearly forced an overreaction. So within there, you kind of say, oh, okay, the norm might be mass mutas for that player, but they'll still have a reaction where they go away from it because Thors, mines, Widow, turrets, all well placed enough. If you're not getting damage done with it, and you just keep massing mutas and you keep not finding damage, obviously it does get to be a slippery slope. For us, though, I think definitely going for a lower muta count to start and doing, a bit of harassment, a bit of shutting down drops. They're really good for controlling, obviously, very good for hunting down drops on the edges of the map, and that sort of stuff, and stopping your opponent multi-pronging. But we'll go default 8 to 14 meters and +1 air weapons. We'll cut it there, and we'll try to just go straight up to the Hive and the Broodlords from there. And it's mostly a Lingbane army for the most part.
Yeah, I had always preferred the lower muta count, like 20 or less. Going beyond 20, I'd seen players like Moonglade do that, but it's very volatile. I wasn't really a huge fan of it.
Yep. So the future branch will be mass mutas and keep upgrading as long as we're getting tempo. And if they overreact with defense, as I was saying, switch gears to more defensive, right? That'd be sick. You left the replay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just glancing through it quickly to get a little feel for it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the overspeed opening, so I'd probably scratch that one and try to get us to just be a bit more generically safe. But safety roaches, safety, just all the traditional heavy queen, go up to 8 or 9 queens every game, with later banelings. What are you more confident with, or what are the decisions? Why do you want roaches? Is that because Hellbats have been a big trauma factor? Is that why you like fast banelings or fast roaches some games? Do you prefer the heavy queen some games? What are your thoughts on that whole choice that you make?
I feel like queen heavy, I can defend everything except for the Marauder Hellbat Viking push.
Okay.
That's the one where I feel like I insta-die if I skipped roaches or banelings, but against everything else, I feel like queens and responsive units you can do pretty okay.
Okay. Yeah, you need to have banelings faster against that push. So that's something where I think if you say, look, I feel confident against everything except that one thing, that's an easy choice to say, like, let's stick on that then. Because it's already like doing well versus everything, and that other build will fade in and out of the meta, right? So we don't want to like base our whole thing around that. At the same time, if it's on our mind and god damn that push is powerful, we want to try and prepare for it. Can defend anything except Marauder held that Viking push. So I guess what we want to do is figure out how do we scout that push. How do we scout that push, and how do we essentially that build? I believe it's normally gas first. I'm not sure of the exact build order because I don't do it myself, but normally it's a gas first Hellion build, 2 Marauders with concussive, right? In the first medevac that pops out. Non-add-on starport. Tech lab on barracks producing are both tells of that push. So we could basically just say, if we see both of those with our OV sacrifice, let's just be safe and drop a Baneling Nest. 4-minute Bane Nest? I don't know what time that pressure hits, the Marauder one. Maybe 3:45 Bane Nest? I'm not exactly sure. We can adjust those timings. But that sounds like it should work, I think, as a reaction, where it's like, okay, if we see those two factors, like, yeah, technically it could be they're just making stim and going for a Liberator and just doing some Hellion Liberator pressure and making a fast stim with it. But the fast Baneling Nest doesn't ruin our build, right? And that'll at least give us the beginnings of a reaction, which we can tighten up with a bit more experience when we study some replays of that specific push.
Cool.
Okay.
So
awesome, man.
If it's not that, then are we going layer first?
Without gas?
Yeah.
Like with gas spending?
Yeah.
I would normally probably go double upgrades first, but it's up to us. We could always go layer every game. It takes a reaction out of it, and that's fine. I like to go layer first if it's Banshee. And I like to go double upgrades first if it's not a Banshee. It's my own personal preference.
What do you do double upgrades if it's against Battlecruiser?
If it's Battlecruiser, and I know it's Battlecruiser, I'm just mega focused on droning super hard, I guess, and making sure I've got tons of queens, and then build a second spore in my third and a second spore in my main. I'd still try to get double upgrades, but they wouldn't be a super high priority. In general, I kind of see that as like a mech opening, even if they go into bio off it. Like any mech opening, I'm like, get 60, 65 drones and protect them is like the most important thing in the world for me, because I feel like if I can get that up, I can explode forwards. But like it's the flexible mech opening pressures, right? Where you're like, oh, there's like Hellions here and a Hellbat drop there, or there's like a Liberator here and Hellions there, and you know, it's always like the most kind of fancy pressures that smoothly transition into mech. So just trying to protect against that and knowing that upgrades are nowhere near as important against mech. But it's more important to just, you know, get your economy up and then get your tech up, right? Get out, whether it be Baneling speed and Hydra upgrades or Roach speed and some Roaches. Those are the things which shut down the mech pressures really hard and the mid-game mech attacks.
Sweet.
Do you have a replay of you playing the Heavy Queen style? And then we can kind of use that as a basis.
I think I have one. I didn't really get that many good games against Terrans on the... let me switch accounts real fast.
No worries, man.
Join channel Neuro W so I can find you. But...
Dunsies.
Yeah, there was a patch fairly recently, so I don't have that big set of stuff.
Yeah, of course. Because yeah, if we can just lock down the consistency with the Queen opening, I have defended, by the way, the Marauder Hellbat Viking push without Banelings before, but it needs to have been a game where I like basically didn't miss a beat with my Queen production. I had like a real tight, smooth opening, and then it was just like real smooth, nonstop Queens, and then I've kind of like my spotting overlords kind of got wind of like, oh, there's a medevac coming along with the Hellions. Like immediately, without even seeing the Viking and the Marauders, I know it's like some sort of Hellbat push. And I'm like, get every queen down there. And then I get them in a big arc in a big wide open area. And then I'm like pulling them back individually. And the transfuses are just landing like crazy. And I've been good with only putting down a total of 3 creep tumors. I haven't been a greedy boy who's gone for 5 tumors and hence has 2 less transfuses on his queens, which sometimes decides your engagements. Some maps you just end up fighting in a position where there's not enough space to spread your queens out, and that's really bad against Hellbat pushes because they start dealing splash damage and you start getting stuck on each other trying to pull back the queens they're targeting. So there's a lot of factors that go into those Hellbat pressures and queen defenses, which is interesting.
I think this is it. Not 100%. It's not labeled, but it's a medium length game against a Terran.
No worries. We'll see how it goes.
But yeah, I like Bane Nest openings. I think they work pretty well against most things. The thing that I'm lacking is the consistency in spending. Double upgrades is not something that I've really explored in a long time. So
I think it's more important to focus on droning your third. So I'm like, I think that's always lower priority, and I think the number of players who go like double Evo 4 minutes and then just like can't reliably defend their work account and just lose the game. They're like, well, if I don't get touched, this is great, but if the Terran does some competent harassment that I'm not completely ready for, it's like I just take damage. So I think especially in the times of everyone doing Hellion Liberator, or Hellion Banshee, Hellion Battlecruiser, many different variations of the above, Hellbat Vikings. It's better to not be ultra prioritizing those upgrades. And if we're going 5 minutes 30 double Evo, 6 minutes double Evo even, preferably no later than that, it's totally fine.
Cool. Because I feel like I don't understand the power spikes as well in ZvT. Our coaching in ZvP gave me a lot better sense of those windows of when you can be really strong and assertive on the map. With ZvT, I've been more reliant on stuff like counterattacks, I think. Unless I'm against Cyclones. Against Cyclones, I feel like I have a better progression, where I defend with Roachling Ravager and then eventually get into Hydra Viper and abduct and stuff, and you're good.
Yeah. So if you're doing an OV speed build, I think if you're doing it, like real small thing, if you're doing an OV speed build, I think it's probably better to do a creep tumor first on the natural. But like that's why having so many openings can get so confusing, because there's so many tiny adjustments for each variation of the opening. Let's see how we play this out, because in general your queen count is just going to be slowed down with this opening. So normally if we'd skipped OV speed, you're doing the fast roach horn one in this one. Okay, yeah. Let's see how this goes. We're gonna see. Okay, fusion core. All right, so we know it's range libs or a battle cruiser. So, ooh, we did hit quite a supply block there. Okay. And we just built 14, 18, 16 lings. But your roach horn was already done. So yeah, I think this is looking like... And we're behind on economy already. So I think, yeah, looking at this game, I think it feels like you're not too practiced in this opening, necessarily. Because we should have just been building roaches there, I would imagine, rather than zerglings. So that's always one of the big things. Whenever you are going to focus on a roach opening, I think it's so important to like even cost your macro a slight bit to get the roach horn slightly earlier, because there's so many points where people go, oh crap, my roach horn's a few seconds from finishing, or they don't realize it's finished and they build zerglings. And if we've invested in a roach horn, we want to have like the most efficient defense, because roaches are just not a great offensive unit unless we really commit to the other side of the map, right? Like the roaches, we want to defend as efficiently as possible. And the zerglings were kind of a little bit more okay to be a bit less efficient because of their mobility. But with the roach, we definitely don't want to be in that position where we're investing in the expensive roach horn tech, we're building a ton of zerglings, and we're going, oh crap, now I need to build roaches after that, because it just gets really awkward. So I definitely think just tightening up the opening will be really good. Let's hop out of this replay, because I don't like this opening. And let's actually just go through a custom game and kind of look at how we think it would look and map it out a little bit. I'm going to let you just host up any map you're comfortable with. Let's just do an empty game, custom game. and map it out. And this is something I should be doing more myself as well. But I think just coming up with some rules, like this is going to be really valuable for me. Because I've been really loose with my ZvT openings lately as well. So just make me the ref, start it up,
easy AI or something.
and yeah, sure, just so we don't have to click continue game at the start. Just make it an economic focus so it stays on its side of the map.
Okay.
And start up whenever you're ready.
So to talk about game flow real fast, just so I have a roadmap
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I can give details. It's basically pumping out queens as fast as possible with speedlings, and then the emphasis is on droning the third as fast as possible, defending different kinds of harass with queens and lings, and then going into double evo, lair in a bane nest. I think just for the sense of consistency, because sometimes I'll say lose an early overlord against a silly marine opening, just having a 345 bane nest. I mean, yeah, the upgrades are going to be slightly later, but if that's more consistency, I'm a streamer, so a lot of times I'm talking. I feel like that
Exactly.
gives me
I
less
like that
opportunities
choice.
to die.
That's a big brain decision right there. Yeah. That's actually like the best thing. Just realizing you're like, you know what? Let's just give ourselves that confidence. It's 50 gas. It's 100 minerals. It's not that bad.
Well, that's
okay.
That's the thing I have to remind viewers of is the early game is when you're usually talking the most, which
Yeah.
if you're kind of autopiloting that period, you want that at least to be pretty steady. So I think I understand
A lot of people,
kind of what we're going for.
A lot of people block the third base. So to get that down a bit reliably, do you get a lot of people SCV blocking it, or just getting there with the Reaper and blocking it?
Usually, I guess it's probably about 40% of the time I get a SCV block, so it's not most of the time.
All right, so what we're going to do is we are actually going to do a normal opening here, hatch gas pool. What we're going to do, though, is we are going to send a drone down to that third nice and early, okay? And we're going to get third base before Zergling speed. You cool with that?
Okay.
It'll delay our ling speed about 20 seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and aim for about a 26 third hatch. Once again, for consistency's sake, so you're not having to do a dozen really tiny reactions 2 minutes into the game. So basically, okay. So what you're going to do is you're only going to put 2 workers on gas at the start, okay? You're not going to put 3 on. Because we're not going to be starting Thingo straight away. So 2 workers on gas, plus 16 on minerals. That's 18 drones. 19th drone goes straight to third base to, you know, to damage SCV and get ready to take third in case they send it there early. So basically, if there's an SCV scout, you can start getting some hits on it straight away. And that's going to be nice. So your next drone you build will rally straight to your third. And obviously, it's not going to be able to put it down straight away. It's going to be hanging around for a while. Once again, consistency. That's what we're focusing on. We're kind of making our build as easy as possible for ourselves, but for very small costs. For the people watching, obviously as a GM player, we're not making big ones. So Overlord, and we will still keep droning behind that. We'll start our 2 queens. Remember, it's not until 26 that we drop that third. So just rallies are on the natural already. Beautiful, beautiful. Everything's looking really good. And just keep droning here. Double queen. I guess you can get 4 zerglings. Yeah, smart brain. We could have queued up 1 drone earlier than that in the main if we wanted to. Actually, no, your way's fine. Doesn't matter. Awesome. Yeah, next up's third base. So that third base should go down before the Reaper arrives. Very occasionally, they'll be able to get a block down if they time it out correctly, but not a big deal. So now we can go more drones, first of all. I mean, link speed's okay. It's not the end of the world, but you might want to prioritize a few more drones than the link speed and pull 1 more off gas. We want to be just hammering that drone key every time 50 minerals comes in here. And obviously more overlords, and then the third queen as well. So I'm going to reorder that. Next time it'll be third queen, then the overlord. I'm going to write that down.
Because you're going to get the supply from the third a little bit faster with this build.
Yeah, and it's always okay to hit a slight 36 supply block. It's better to get that queen started at a nice timing. But yeah, you've done a good rotation here. Your creep queen's at the front. You're still droning, building another overlord as well when you can. And whilst we do have a bit of lava float, that's natural with this, you will get on top of it because we're just so focused on droning at this stage. And this is awesome. All right. So, because you'd normally try to potentially sacrifice your overlord at this time, that's something we want to talk about real quickly. I know this is not necessarily part of the core macro so far of the build, but I'm going to write this as its own kind of dot point list. Scouting. I guess I'll start this by talking about what I do. So I just elucidate my thinking and we can figure it out together. At the moment, I don't bother scouting the front with my overlord. I might poke in just to see the command center, but I will always go kind of down to the left of where your overlord is, basically just ready to sacrifice through the production, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first thing that's amazing for is I can see if the barracks is still on the reactor, which tells me it's either a 2-on-1 or it's like one of these weird, like, I'm continuing to build marine builds. Basically, it tells you it's not a Hellion build, right? So it's something which you have to play a bit differently against, right? Either it's a 2-on-1 or it could be like one of those weird marine tank banshee pushes, you know, the ones with the bunker that they did on the high ground of Port Alexander. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, above the third base, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be something like that. But basically, it just tells you there's something different. The most important thing, though, is about 3:45, 4 minutes, I'll sacrifice that through the production to see if there's anything crazy going on, right? And maybe 3:30 is when we do that as well. So I'm going to say 3:45 is when I would normally do that. And that is going to tell you a few things. Like if there's no add-on the starport, at the very least, you're going to see that. If there's no add-on the barracks and it's building marines and there's no add-on the starport, that can tell you it's just a normal fast Hellbat timing with just a few marines, a medevac, and Hellbats. Tech Lab is upgrading. As we said, we can react with fast Baneley Nest. Now, you're by default building a fast Baneley Nest with this build. So you don't need that, but it can still be nice to know ahead of time. Alternatively, we can just leave the vision at the front, base a lot of our reactions off that since we have a fast Baneley Nest. We only want to send one overlord to the other side of the map like you've done here because Viking's so common. So do you want to go for the sacrifice or prioritize the vision at the front? What do you want to prioritize here?
I think I like the overlord sacrifice. It just gives you a lot more sense of what the build is. A lot of times they don't invest enough to deny it, and a lot of times it's going to die anyway. So I prefer to let my first overlord die gloriously in combat rather than to just kind of sit there until he's shot at.
Indeed. I often find as well, since I've been doing that for a long time, I will see the starport, the barracks, the factory, what they're all doing, and I'll get enough of a read from that. And I'll see there's a marine here, but I'm like, I'm probably not going to get deep enough to see like a fusion core or an armory if it's tucked in a smart position in the back. So I'll actually just back off, and then I'll rotate like down around the bottom of the main, and I'll come back through for a sacrifice later with that overlord. So I'll actually have queued it up immediately, so that by the time it goes down around to the left and to the south, and then comes up through the bottom of their main, I'm going to see if it's mech or bio at 6 minutes or something like that, just naturally with that overlord, because they're very rarely going to have a marine on that bottom side. There's a lot going on at that stage. You're both interacting with Hellions and Banshees and whatever else, and then your overlord naturally almost always gets that scout off. Just a little thing there, but normally we're just sacrificing that overlord. That's our default, so we'll stick with that for now. Okay, cool. So that's just going to give you an idea of what you're up against. Oh, it's 2 factories. Like, shit, let's get roaches right now and get roach speed, you know, or because we're dealing with probably Blue Flame Cyclone or something like that, right? Crazy battle mech. That's cool. So we've got this idea of this scouting now. We're at this stage in the build where we're droning up. We've got the third queen about to pop. Now, about 3:30, you can do it a little bit late. We want to put back on gas, right? We're at 3:29 right now. So I'll put that down in the build. That would go... you know what? Let's say 3:45 Baneley Nest plus back on gas. Because we've left a worker on gas this whole time, we don't need to put back on gas any earlier than that. That way we can just link those two things together. Because I hate looking at a build order where you're like 3:35 Baneley Nest, 3:48 put back on gas, 3:52. It's like, oh no, just chunk it all together. Our brain's not going to remember all that. And basically the marker next is when do we start non-stop queen production across our bases. And that's from when we have 2 bases mineral saturated and the single gas mining. So right now, you have 2 drones about to pop. and they are just rallied to your natural. Your natural's already on 16 workers. Your main's on 16 workers. So we just need to basically put 2 workers on this gas, get 2 more in the main base, and start massing queens. Now, as a general rule, you can prioritize your droning a little bit over that queen production, but more or less, we're going non-stop queens on all 3 hatches from here, up to at least 7 or 8 queens. Because you've got a fast baneling nest with your build, we can be a little bit slower on that queen production, but we still want to go to at least 6 queens, preferably 7. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So 3 third queen ASAP, 345 bane nest plus. So at 2 base saturation, I'm actually going to add this as a sub point of 345 baneling nest plus back on gas. We're going to write should be at 2 base saturation plus 1 gas mining at this point. Start non-stop queen production, but with the addendum, drones take priority. Now, when would they not take priority? If you got someone who's got the fastest, best microed Reaper, who's already chipped like half the hit points off your first queen at the front, and it's already got the fastest Hellions off a gas first ever, and they're already harassing your queen, and you're like, shit, I'm under a lot of pressure, this guy's committing a lot to this. And at that point, you're already pulling your next 2 injecting queens to the front and turning them into creep queens and trying to replace those as quickly as possible, right? There's always reactions kind of inherent within. But as a general rule, if they've gone like a barracks gas, a lot of the time you run into those guys where their first 4 Hellions don't even go across the map, right? They just sit at home because they're worried about a Ling run by. That sort of stuff, especially, is where we want to have as our default, just hold down the drone key. It's okay for those queens to be slightly delayed. We only want to super prioritize those queens over drones if they're really in our face.
Cool. Makes sense.
Okay.
So queen heavy in a
Queens.
response to aggression, otherwise drone production.
Yeah. All right. Ready to start up?
Refill the gas, baneling nest, overlord sack. Don't get supply blocked. Mass queens.
Yeah. So you've got
drone
another
3 bases.
You've got another 15 seconds, so you can definitely drone a little bit more, put the guys back on gas, and then do the baneling nest and just drone for a bit, build another overlord, etc. You know, all that stuff. Then 345 bane nest back on gas, non-stop queens, as you said. Yep, perfect, awesome. That's good, fantastic. You ready?
Affirmative. Let's go.
Let's do it. Bam, 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 bam.
Now I'm setting my rally point to my 3rd.
And
Refilling.
yeah, you might squeeze a few more lings in at this point as well, right? Like just so you've got your net of zerglings in case they try to run past your queens. Good stuff. So the most standard is a Hellion opening. So we're going to imagine we're playing against a Hellion opening. And we're also going to imagine we've seen a starport that's, finished up and building stuff. So any kind of Hellion opening, by default, we drop spores at 4 minutes 30. At least at our 3rd and our main, if not at all bases. But for now, doing really good. And in a few seconds, we can get those spore crawlers down for safety. And that does good versus libs, does good versus banshees, does good versus Hellion drops, mine drops, and of course is the beginnings of our battlecruiser defense as well.
So I'm feeling something to spend gas into at this point. Maybe the Evos now?
Yes. So let's just go those Evos. And this will be the standard, is Evos kind of about this 5-minute mark. And it's okay to float a bit of gas because, if you have to make 7 banelings, those Evos are useless. If you're he's Morphin Elbats, make 7 banelings, those Evos aren't going to be useful for a long time. So that's totally fine. Lots of overlords and, yeah, awesome. And reset the rally points and start taking all the gases now. Yeah, 4th base, beautiful, beautiful. Like, if you get your upgrades started this fast while having relatively smooth saturation of your 3rd mineral iron, it's disgustingly good. Don't forget your macro hatch as well, but doing awesomely. And lair as soon as you can after 1-1. Yep. Very nice.
71 workers, yeah.
Yeehaw!
And that's when we just flip into link production, I'm guessing.
Yep. 3 base saturation, non-stop Ling Bane production until you win a fight is the most basic of rules, right? This is versus bio, of course. Non-stop Ling Bane until you crush a fight or have, you know, great map control comfort in the game, right? Then you can drone your 4th, right? And we only head to Hive once we drone that 4th base as well. So it can be like as you start droning the 4th if you've got the money, but basically it's like if we're going Hive, we want both gases and most of that mineral line saturated. And this is basically, obviously, where the build, you know, we can practice for another minute from here, but not much longer than that because there's not much point to. But whenever you've got comfort in a game, Overlord speed's not a bad idea if you've got the money. If pressed up against the wall, you never need that. But if you've got comfort, go for it. Overlords out on the center edges of the map. You've already started to spread a few, but I would put them like way down, like bottom center of the map, top right, sort of middle of the map, really to get just more vision of those drops. Beautiful 2-2 timing, very nice. And the other thing I would focus on is obviously spreading creep as much as possible. That's, you know, that's a given, right? Win a fight, spread creep. Win a fight, spread creep. The standard rule of Ling Bane. Win by spreading creep to your opponent's base, not by killing them. Watch the Terran just lose all faith in humanity and go to the BNet forums and start whining once you get creep far enough out on the map. Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
we won to fight, we have the infestation pit. Okay, I think this kind of like makes sense.
Yeah.
We could go into a Mutaflock as we get the Hive, and then Greater Spire whenever the Hive is done.
And obviously we'd have a lot more banelings than this. If they had any presence on the map as well, we'd probably have another 10, 12, 15 banes in this army. But at any point where you feel like you've had a very smooth opening, you've got this shifting gear of I'm ahead, I'm behind, right? Games where you're behind, you might not even take, like, you might do something like, oh, I actually stay on 3 gases all game. I don't even build a Spire because I don't have the gas. Or I just focus on having enough Ling Bane because I know if I have enough army to crush one fight, I'm back in the game, right? But like if you lose, you know, 30 drones to Hellions in the early game, that's like a sick comeback move because you can even saturate your 4th mineral line. And if you haven't taken the gases on your, you know, you're on 2 or 3 gases that whole time, you're actually on a very similar economic investment as you would be with like this 6 gas, 66 drone Mutaplay, right? But you've actually got 1,000 more wings and banelings, which is, as long as your opponent, you know, doesn't sit back till they're maxed and make a ton of Widow Mines, you're going to have a crushing mid-game army. So that's a good adjustment. In terms of other little thing here, so your drone count right now is only 69, so we would have loved to build another, say, 10 drones on that 4th base, yeah. Really want to get up to that 80 count, and some people even like 85, right? So having a 5th base down can be really nice as well, and that allows you to do the I'm going to roll banelings into you and look away strategy. Not even watch them. Against Widow Mines, that's my go-to, by the way. I'm not sure what yours is. If someone's playing Widow Mines, I basically send 80% of my army, like all my Zerglings or most of my Zerglings and Mutas to counterattack. And all I do is I just set my rally point, not control group, to somewhere out the front of my base towards where their push is coming, and I just mass banelings, build Zerglings, make everyone into banelings, and I roll banelings in 10 to 15 at a time, just clicking them into their army. I don't even look at it. I just say, every time I click 15 banelings into your army, you need to like run backwards, stim, spread, micro. It's taking me 0 APM. All my APM is in building more units, building more banelings, and microing my counterattacks, my backstabs. And that's how you destroy and pick apart a Widowmine player, because all they want to do is set up their nice little immaculate spread and have you attack into it. And if you give them that fight, they're going to be really, really happy about it. And if you refuse to give them that fight, you're like, no, come deeper on creep. You've just spent, 30 seconds setting up the perfect gigantic spread across 2 screens around a cliff. Guess what? You're not in range of a hatchery yet. I don't need to fight you. Every time they try to move forward, they have to take so much APM because their stuff clumps up to avoid banelings, and that's why we just keep doing the baneling tax, that 10 to 15 baneling roll in, and it just annihilates them. yeah, once you play it from the Terran side, you really appreciate how incredibly hard it is to push through a creep against a Zerg who understands how to just roll Banelings into you without caring about them and without committing his whole army. Terran's whole goal in ZvT Bioversing Bane is to get the Zerg to A move into the perfect Terran setup. And the Zerg's goal is to not let them force you to do that and to go and fight them everywhere else. But yeah, I think this is a good setup. Are there any questions popping into your head?
So branches for mech stuff. If they're going for something like the double Thor drop, I do see that kind of often, not super often, but any adjustments to like going for a Broodlord push? Are there spots where you would choose not to do that?
If you realize it's mech and it's like traditional mech, like you can play Ling Bane, like let's say it's battle mech first of all. So you see battle mech. How do you respond initially yourself? Do you just still try to mass mutiling Bane Raynor style, or
no? Usually I go Roachling Ravager. Sometimes I'll take Burrow and Tunnel Claws if I'm feeling saucy, but otherwise I try to get my Hydra Den Infestation Pit and then go Hydra Viper and emphasize the attack upgrades for ranged on my Evo.
Okay, so you go the Hydra Viper route. Cool. I go the fancy approach at the moment. I really like Hydra Bane, so I'm playing Hydra Bane against mech at the moment, and it goes very well versus battle mech once you get it down. It's very fancy getting there though. Roaches are a much more secure early stage and a great unit. Hydra Viper is good. I think you can do that. Nidusing is pretty incredible versus mech. I do Nidus Swarm Host with Hydra Bane against battle mech to wear them down over time and just have insane Baneling counts to equalize, right? Whenever anyone has a crazy Cyclone Hellion count, more Banelings is always the answer when you're both at max supply, because more Banelings just beats Cyclones, it beats Hellions. There's no such thing as too many of them, right? I think Hydra Viper is a decent approach there. I think going into Broodlords for a finishing blow is one of the best ways of Hydra Viper. So I think if you're playing Hydra Viper, straight into Broodlords, easy finish. That's just the best way to do it. If you've done well enough with your Hydra Viper. I'm down with it. Yeah, I think that's good. Obviously, scouting when they've gone mech. Let's say you're playing mech 40%, 35% or more of your games. You want to have a built-in scout timing. So how do you scout that it's mech? I would say one of the biggest ones for me is just sending lings in constantly from 6 minutes to see if it's mech, right? And it can be hard. Sometimes they hide it, but basically from when things stabilize in that mid game, if I can try to just run in a few Zerglings to their third, to their natural, and be like, let's see. And usually you'll see a pack of Marines or a pack of extra Hellions after the ones you've already killed on the map, and you go, oh, okay, cool. The other way is, of course, Overseer. As soon as Lair finishes. That's pretty late with this build. Now, the last one is second Overlord in bottom center of the map, I'm going to call it. You get what I mean by that, right? Basically somewhere where the Vikings probably not going to check, and that you can kind of send in as a delayed scout after your first sacrifice around 5 minutes 30 or something. So you can send in at, 4 minutes 30 or something like that. So hopefully we're not being blindsided by mech at the 8 minute mark when 2 Thors and 14 Hellbats rock up and we're on Lingbane Queen and we're like, oh no. You can deal with it, of course, but we've all had those times where that surprises you so much. All your Lings die on the Hellbats before your Banelings get rid of them, and then you've got nothing to deal with Thors, and you're like, oh god, Queen's trying to kill Thors is just sad. They do no damage. But yeah, I think that's pretty well mapped out. Any more questions popping up?
I think that covers most of it. I hadn't really tried to do Hydraling Bane against mech as much, but that would basically streamline the whole process where I'm not trying to branch and flex between Bane and Roach. That was one of the comments you made in the series against Cuddlebear, was I was being hyper safe with Banes and Roaches rather than thinking about strong power spikes that I can create for myself and then take initiatives against my opponent. Whereas with this, I think the opening, first of all, is droning up the bases faster than I've been doing. And then the double Evo. I've been going single Evo sometimes because I felt like I would be too greedy if I took 2, but I think with the high queen count and the consistent Baneless timing, it should be something I can figure out.
Yeah, we're not super prioritizing it, right? Like you went for it pretty early this game because you weren't dealing with Hellion pressure or anything. So you got it at like 450. In a real game, that's going to be 520, 530, right? Sometimes 6 minutes if they're doing really good pressure, right? And that's totally fine. So we're not hyper prioritizing that. And I think that's the important thing there. So let's make it so you just go Hydras versus Battle Mech then. As you said there, like why not just streamline that? Why bother with the Roach Warren? Like we're focusing on Queens. We've got a fast Baneling nest by default in your build. Fuck it. Yeah, we've got Bane Queen Ling. That can deal with Battle Mech. Let's stick with that. We'll just add a Hydras and then go up to Hydra Viper. So we're going to cut Roach Ravager out of our anti-mech plan for the moment. And as always, problems can arise with any choice we make here. We'll deal with those as we get to them, but I think it's pretty solid at the moment. I've been doing really well on the current meta against mech with the Hydra Bane. Like I've been falling really behind in some games, but as long as at some point you stabilize on 70 plus drones and you've got a decent amount of Hydra Bane out, it's very hard for a mech army to get across the map because the moment they're unsieged and their Hellbats are a bit clumped and you just control click all your Banelings, or I keep my Banelings on a separate control group against mech, I just click them all into the Hellbats, the Hydra's A move, and it's like, oh, I just killed your entire army, even though I've lost 70 drones throughout the first 8 minutes of this game. It's disgusting some of the comebacks we can make. So I think before we leave this game, you should definitely blow those Banelings up either manually or on something.
What was I teasing you the whole time? And it's like, what's gonna happen?
I'm like, I gotta see what happens, man. The stream is gonna lose their minds if they don't see what happens to these Banelings.
One of the fun things that maybe not everyone knows is the Baneling is it the most value dense unit in the game because it's half a supply and it's quite a bit of money in each one. So if you look at a Baneling army on the graph, it's really high. The downside is they can only fight one time. So we beat the army. Was that a fair trade?
Yes.
Was that efficient?
I think that was all right. It's pretty good. I mean, that's it. People always tell me swarm hosts aren't good versus mech, or they're not as good, especially as it goes later, unless you hit like really early with roach swarm hosts because they're too supply inefficient. And there's two things I say to that. Number one, swarm hosts are now 3 supply, not 4. They were 4 for a while, and yes, that was crazy how much they took. But it's always balanced out with any sort of Baneling style with your ability to add Banelings in, right? It's like you look at a player who's trying to go 90 drones, Swarm Host Hydra, or in your case, Hydra Viper Broodlord, and your army does not look that big. And they can just jump on you with a ton of Hellions, and your army is terrible. But you add 30 Banelings, that's 15 supply. It's almost nothing. And 30 Banelings will kill so many Hellions and Hellbats, especially on creep. It is insane. So the Baneling power, their ability to make up for your supply deficit, like you just mentioned, it's crazy. It's actually insane. So yeah, as a late game unit, Banelings are crazy, and it's funny because we've always see like Koreans in late game in all matchups, tons of Banelings a lot of the time, and foreigners like it's so inefficient. We've always been like, oh, is Dark really going to make another 80 Banelings in this late game? ZvT. And sometimes throw a game terribly for it, but more often than not, use that just insane amount of potential damage for so little supply and just crash through because of it. Do you want to play a custom game quickly, trying out this opening, and I can kind of take it easy on you while you practice it, like, or
Sure.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna have a quick wee. I'll be back in a sec.
Okay.
Memento.
I can refresh the build order. And if he didn't mute me, I could talk to his stream. Hang on, I'm gonna open the stream to see if his chat can hear me. Hey, pig chat. Thank you for the subscription. Hey, pigs chat, can you hear me? I opened up the chat. Did he leave me on? Or am I muted? Oh, did he play a highlight? Oh, they probably can't hear me then. Rip. That's real trust right there. When you're in voice comm with someone and you AFK. And they can talk to your chat. Just one number, thank you for the 4 months. Where is the boom? I blew them up. They went kaboom. Would you consider yourself semi-pro? No. I'm a professional streamer. Fully professional. Very professional. I'm the most professional streamer. Semi-pro, I would say, is someone who is making enough from tournaments like a part-time job. They're not doing top 8 performances or even top 16 performances at the big stuff, but they're probably challenger level, or at least getting about a round away from challenger. I'm GM, and there's an MMR that can describe my rating. Grim Axe, thank you for the 2 months. ZvT coaching, wow. Someone said it seems like Neuro is bored. I'm just focused on what he's saying. I don't need to be making faces like to indicate that I'm interested in what he's talking about. I'm just focusing my brain power on listening, trying to absorb what he's saying. Landman, thank you for the 16 months. Did you see this session, dude? This has been some good coaching. Oh yeah, so yes you have. Okay. 2 workers on gas, 16 on minerals. 19th run goes to the 3rd base. Go down to 1 on gas. 26 third hatch, 33rd queen. 32 overlord, then ling speed. Whoa, that's late. 3rd queen as soon as possible. Okay. 345 baneling nest back on gas. 2 base saturation, 1 gas mining. Non-stop queen production. Okay. What's up, Nerd Rich Fitness? You look like that when you talk to people. What, this face? You're just so excited. Where you're not only transparent about how you feel about situations, you have very extreme facial reactions. So someone is talking about they had kind of a tough time because there was a long line at the place they had to go do a thing, and you're just like I had to wait for 10 minutes in line. I had a viewer who was commenting, and they said that it looked like I was bored because I had a very neutral facial expression, and I tend to be very expressive, and I was explaining to this lovely viewer that I was using my brain power to focus on the words you were saying, not on making like a stupid derpy happy face because I was so excited that we were doing a coaching session, which I am. I am very happy, and this has been fantastic. But I'm not necessarily going to have like a toothy grin from ear to ear every 2 seconds.
Well, you're actually the favorite person I've ever coached. I have a real life friend who's been hanging out on the stream for many years, and he was telling me how he recently got into your stream a few months back. We were chatting about this, and he was saying, he's like, oh man, I don't know. He's like, I just had this weird idea that Neuro was some guy who'd never really watched his stream, but I thought he was just some weird StarCraft streamer. It wasn't my thing. And he was saying he really got into your stream recently. He was just saying he really liked your thing. And he brought up, he's like, I was watching your stream years ago, the first time you guys ever did coaching. And he told me the story, and it brought back the memory. He's like, yeah, because he teaches guitar and music to people. Mm. And we got onto this because we were talking about students that show up like super unprepared, and how it's like, you kind of need to recalibrate yourself and just be like, oh, okay, we're not going to cover that much today. We've got to kind of like, take things through from the start, right? And he was talking about how the very first time, we got coaching, I think you had just got GM, or you were almost GM. This was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago or something. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And you showed up with like the most preparation ever. You had everything written down. You had your document ready. You had all these replays with set questions. And we got like the most I think I've ever covered in a coaching session, like in the first coaching session we ever did. It was insane how much content, and just so many questions got answered, and we discussed so many things. I just remember that one as being the best one ever. My friend said this to me. I was like, oh, I remember that coaching session. It was actually incredible. So always a pleasure to do some coaching with you, my man.
Yeah, we could hit up a more versatile one like that. I think that wasn't our first session. That was after we had done a few. So I think we did like one per matchup that was just what is my game plan. And then once I had ironed out just the basics of how to do the build, then it was like if I lost and I was confused about how I should branch or deviate or respond to stuff, then I marked it. And then that was, I think you called it our rapid fire coaching session or something, where we crack open a game and I would say, okay, this was the thing and I got destroyed. Like, how do we fix this? So that was like making the whole approach a lot more robust. But I believe that would have been our 4th session then.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. Awesome, man. I'm ready whenever you are. And my chat's making fun of me. They're like, you can't afford to take it easy on Neuro with your Terran. I can't, guys. I'm not saying I'm better than Neuro. I'm saying he's focusing on learning a new build order. So he's not going to be focusing on staring at what every Hellion Reaper and Liberator does. So I'm not going to mega try hard cheese with my early pressure to the point where I'm just disrupting his ability to focus. Because right now, Neuro's just focusing on calibrating the order of things and making that second nature and getting that muscle memory down. So as much as I do sometimes throw my students in the deep end of the pool, it's better at this point to just focus on getting the shit in order and down.
And if Pig does throw you into a pool, I'm a lifeguard, and if you need some help, I will jump in and try to save you, okay?
Indeed.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Good luck, have fun, man.
Okay. He's gonna metagame me because he knows what I'm going for.
2-port Banshee proxy.
Same map for consistency. Do you have any maps you like or dislike this season of the new ones?
I don't really like Turbo Cruise, but what doesn't help is that everyone vetoes it, so I don't get to play it much. So I'm like, I'd like to play it a lot more so that I could, you know, come up with some more rules for it and stuff, right? But not getting that practice on it at the moment.
I've started an RP persona for StarCraft Ladder. Have you ever played against Slammer?
Slammer needs a bigger hammer.
Yep. So he's always a treat because I think that's in the realm of being saucy with the banter, but it's not really BM. They're just being silly and kind of role-playing a character.
Exactly.
So I made a Zerg character called Icky Sticky, and I have a video series of it now where its sole purpose is to creep spread as fast as possible everywhere, and that's the most important thing. And it makes for really funny games. I do a voice with it too.
You just need a new email each time you create an account, right? Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's just a new Battle.net account, and then you can create a new one.
You need an email, and then if you want to unlock the ranked ladder, you have to purchase an announcer. Purchase an announcer or something like that, and then you don't have to do those like trial games or whatever.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like win one ladder game a day for 10 days straight or something. Make sure you're not someone spamming accounts.
2 out of 3 in the gas. It's different.
Sorry, not win a game, play a game. Otherwise, it could take a long time for newer players. Yeah, and remember to send that early worker down to the 3rd if it's not already there.
Dude, he's there. He's excited.
광물이 더 필요하네. 광물이 모자라네. 광물이 부족하네. 광물이 더 필요하네. 광물이 부족하네. 새 여왕이 탄생했네. 광물이 모자라네. 기지가 공격받고 있네.
I have a ping advantage. You stand no chance.
대군주가
Sorry, Terran players don't need to micro anyway. It's the easy race. I can hear the reeds from here. Race is the hardest.
새 여왕이 탄생했네. 광물이 더 필요하네.
It's alright. I know there's a few Demuslim fans in here. I'm a big fan of Demuslim as well, but I know you guys need a clip to share about balance, so Terran is the hardest race. There you go. Notice I was silent on either side. You guys can easily throw that on Reddit like you like to do. Have some fun with that.
광물이 모자라네. 광물이 부족하네. 광물이 모자라네. 광물이 부족하네. 시작했네. 이 저주받은 군락 또 다른 여왕이네.
Bunch of my stuff was late. Learning a new build.
어승성하게 새 여왕이 탄생했네.
Yep. Remember the goal. It's not about winning. It's not about everything being perfect. It's about everything being in the right order, so that we're remembering the correct order, right? Nothing's ever perfect the first time, but if we focus on the right order, then we start to build the memory of, oh, this comes before this bit comes after that, and that's the beginning of then tightening it up afterwards. Whereas a lot of us get a bit too upset when something's a little bit late, and that's just to be expected. First time doing a build, can't really expect anything else.
That's taking it easy.
Yeah, I'm not taking it easy. Take back anything I said earlier. We're being a dickhead now. Battle cruiser in the back of your main. Spores were on time though. Good job.
일벌레가 공격당하고 있네.
Oh.
적이 겁도 없이 우리 기지를 공격한. 광물이 아군 영광의 전투를 시작했네.
I don't know whether you're going mech or bio, but
에너지가
The default is to play as if it's against Bio.
자네의 기괴한 저그가 또 변이해.
I was gonna say I have the fastest unit in the game. It's going into your base. I scouted your base.
새 여왕 변이 완료. 아군이 교전을 시작했네. 베스핀가 광물지대를 다 써버렸네. 역겨운 대군주가 더 필요하네.
So for those watching, the reason the money is so high is because the barracks, the first 4 barracks were late. Because normally when those reactors kick in, and these 2 would have been built on reactors rather than building their own, that's where your expenditure would kind of come together a bit better.
It's because Terran is the
But-
difficult race and Zerg is the beginner race.
Exactly. I don't know why most people can't be as honest and just accept that their race is broken, but Neuro is a true hero, guys. He understands. This is one of these games where I like kind of make it look like I'm doing, like if you hadn't done that run-in, it would actually look like I'm meching just because my bio production was so delayed. It would it's like when a mistake works in your favor. You're like, I don't know if I deserve to trick my opponent with this, but
Did you know there's actually a Guinness Book of World Records record for the person who's made the most Hellions before going bio?
really?
Yeah, I actually played against them.
Drunken Boy? I feel like back in the day that would have been Drunken Boy. He used to do some crazy builds.
Played against a guy who made 16. I was like, oh, it's mech.
교전을 시작했네. 아군 영광의 영광의 전투를 시작했네. 에너지가 더 필요하네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 그 명령은 받아들일 수 없네. 아군이 교전을 시작했네. 광물지대를
Oh,
베스핀
didn't see
가스가
that.
부족하네. 아군이 영광의 전투를 시작했네. 자네의 집이 베스핀 가스는 아군이 적전을 시작했네. 베스핀 가스를 먹으려고 하네. 광물이 더 필요하네. 기지가 공격받고 있네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 아군이 영광의 전투를 부족하겠네.
List of thing pigs afraid of? Nothing.
I was like, oh god, I'm not prepared for those mutas. I'm like, this is the sacrificial drop to try and scare you away.
에너지가
Like, go home, mutas. I'm not ready for you.
그 명령은 따를 수 없네.
Yeah, that's actually one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm playing against
에너지가 모자라. 새 여왕이
Terran players,
탄생했네.
is when they don't respect things and they just kind of run in anyway.
아군이 교전을 시작했네. 에너지 그 명령은 받아들일 수 없네. 수행할 수 없네. 전투에서 적과 마주한 명령일세. 왕맥이 고갈됐네. 아군이 영광의 전투를 시작했네. 에너지가 부족하네. 광물지대를 다 써버렸네. 왕맥이
That's not how you do it.
광물지대를 다 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 광물이 모자라. 아군이 교전을 시작했네.
No.
광물이 더 필요한 아군이 왕맥이 고갈되기 시작했네.
You guys know what's super awesome? I'm always telling you guys in chat, have your excuses ready.
아군이
In this case, I don't even need one. I just coached Neuro in his ZvT and he's beating me? It's a win-win.
I would have to coach
no
his
losing.
Terran for it to be truly fair.
광물지대를 다 써버렸네.
I literally can't lose. Like, this just shows how good of a coach I am. Yeah. Very nice macro, though.
Greater Spire is done.
광물이 부족하네.
My man.
왕맥이 고갈됐네. 진화 부족. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 광물이
Do you have a
모자라.
moment to speak about our Lord and Savior Seven Corruptors?
불가능한
Spreading the
명령일세.
good word.
아군이 영광의 전투를 시작했네.
Run! These Marines have upgrades.
광물이 더 필요하네. 아군이 교전을 시작한 완료. 광물지대를 다 써버렸네.
There's a reason that We often talk about how well endowed Neuro is, guys, and that right there was it.
그 명령은 다를 수 없네. 보급품을 더 추가할 수 없네. 에너지
So we call this the NA Zerg attack, guys. It's where you run all your units in front of your Broodlords. Only to be tried when you're already winning the game. But I think I've taught my stream enough about one of my favorite moves when I'm playing Zerg. And that is, it's called going full Zerg. And it's where you get ahead, and then the moment you leave creep, you decide to clump everything as much as possible and attack from one angle over and over again until your opponent goes from 0% chance to 20% chance of winning. So
It's called the semi.
I know I've done that many times. It's a semi-throw at this point. Let's see if you can take it to a full one. Come on, Neuro. I know you've got it. Just do that 5 more times. Oh my god. Holy link out, Batman.
광물이 아군이 도전을 시작했네. 광물이 모자라.
Oh, you said to pull every single queen. I can see how that would be
Yes.
helpful right now.
Yes. That first fight also really would have made a big difference if we didn't run our army in front of the units. Go in with the Broodlords and then run in with everything. Probably would have won you the game, but even better, Queen's there for transfuse. Army only commits when I commit.
Well, they're here now. They're just fashionably late.
영광의 전투를 시작했네.
Oh, come on, Vikings. It's all on you two.
도전을 시작했네.
Attack upgrades are for the weak.
광물
Oh, I had an extra barracks there that was never hotkeyed. Not that I was building out of anyway. GG, well played. Nice. Nice, 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 nice. It's GG, man.
Okay.
So, what went well with the opening? I know you forgot Ling speed for a bit.
Yeah, link speed
other than
was
that-
off. Baneness was off. The supply management was fine. The droning was better than what I've been doing. I think the money just feels a lot better than my usual games. You weren't really YOLO with the early attacks though, so
Yeah. I could have gone full debag, especially on a smaller or medium-sized map, like in Euro Pugnancy. If I'm really microing that Reaper and that first 2 Hellions, first 4 Hellions and stuff, then I can get very, very annoying with that. I would advise pull every drone from the BC. You pulled some drones, but you left like 7 there, so I could just click them down. Just be real careful with that. A lot of Terran players won't micro that correctly, but I remember just watching TY streaming with his BCs and like he just was so methodical with target firing and just tanking spore damage and just chasing down the drones and focus firing them. And I've started doing that more, and I find, yeah, if the player thinks a queen in a spore is gonna delay me, it's like, ooh, I'm gonna get like 9-10 drones, nice and easy. Get that BC out, rotate around, pick off some overlords or a 4th hatch being attempted, clear some creep, go home, repair, come back, and the BC's done its job. Whereas if you're gonna pull drones, pull all the drones, and it just takes those targets away from it. And yeah, don't let the BC be the winning cattle bruiser that it wants to be.
sweet.
Do you want to play one more?
Sure.
I'm down for one more. I wanted to do cheesy games today, so I will do that after this game. But yeah, good stuff. Thank you everybody who's been supporting both our streams. Moogle Messiah, thanks for the tier 1 sub. Really appreciate everyone does go above and beyond to support my own Neuro streams. We are both full-time streamers who really, are able to do this because you guys actually are nice enough to choose to support us. We both pretty much do free, next to no paywalled content, and it's all based off a people who pay what it's worth to them system. So thank you guys, appreciate it.
The analogy I give is it's kind of like being a shopkeeper. Anyone can come in and take whatever they want to. And if they're really excited about it, they can choose to throw money at you.
Hells yeah.
And because some people are extra super generous, the show will go on.
Yeah.
광물이 부족하네.
Alright, this is a more intimate map. So set your stream settings to mature this time. Thank you.
광물이 모자라네.
Wow.
광물이 더 필요하네.
Thank you so much, Vormat. Appreciate the 5-month resub, mate. I'll give the next call outs when I'm not also on Neuro's stream so that I'm not being too much of an obnoxious co-streamer who's too lazy to press his Discord mute button.
광물이 부족하네.
Do you sing at all?
Very poorly. I really love karaoke. So I grew up not really singing. Like I sing just random songs I make up in my head, kind of like, you know, like a crazy person. But I've been like Dot loves karaoke, and after going to karaoke enough times and drunkenly shouting, I am slightly less tone deaf. So it used to be like nails on a chalkboard, but now I think it's just kind of like someone banging the lid of two pans together, kind of like it's like people like it doesn't sound good, but it doesn't sound terrible anymore. How about you?
That sounds like progress. I did choir in middle school. High school was orchestra. I would say I have relative pitch, but I don't have perfect pitch. So I can sing. I wouldn't say I'm super gifted in terms of the quality of voice, but I did musical theater in university. So I've been enjoying Twitch Sings. I've done that a couple times. I'm gonna do it for an hour before I host you.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun memes.
I haven't tried that. Should try it.
The only downside is it seems like the VODs have a audio desync problem between the sound of the game and your voice, but when it's live, it's good fun times.
광물이 더 필요하네. 광물이 부족하네. 광물이 모자라네. 광물이 더 필요하네. 이 저주받은 군락이 또 다른
It's
여왕이네.
about time. You're doomed, dude.
광물이 더 필요하네.
Oh jeez. You won. Rip.
Came at the cost of my aliens being 4 seconds late though. Messed up my landing that before I went in for the micro.
There is no higher calling for a Terran player than to set aside their macro for a fancy Reaper move.
I mean, you play the NA ladder, so you know all about it.
역겨운
Oh, well done.
광물이 모자라네. 광물이 부족하네.
I really thought I'd get that. But well-placed Zerglings, guarding the creep tumor as always. For those of you guys watching, that's one of the most important moves, guarding your creep tumors.
광물이 부족하네. 광물이 더 필요하네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 광물이 수확한 저그가 진화를 마쳤네. 광물이 더 필요하네. 광물이 모자라네. 그 명령은 받아들이 저주받은 대군주가 아군이 광물이 왕의 전투를 깨운 대군주가 광물이 모자라네. 대군주를 더 생성하네. 새 여왕이 탄생했네. 대군주가 더 필요하네. 이 저주받은 군락에 또 다른 역겨운 대군주가 더 필요하네. 아군이 교전을 시작했네. 광물이 부족하네. 불가능한 명령일세. 광물이 더 필요하네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 에너지가 더 필요하네. 베스핀 가스가 더 있어야 하네. 자네의 점막 종양이 정화되고 있고 이 저주받은 군락이 또 다른 여왕이 전투에서 적과 마주쳤다. 아군이 교전을 시작했네. 우리 기지가 공격받고 있네. 시작했네.
Oh my.
광물이 모자라네. 점막 중량이 공격받고 있네. 에너지가 모자라네. 베스핀 가스 너무 광맥이 고갈됐네. 아군이 교전을 시작했네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳐 해군주를 더 생성하게. 이런 자네의 기괴한 적과 또 변이했네. 해군주가 그 명령은 받아들일 수 없네. 에너지 아군이 영광의 전투를 시작했네. 에너지가 모자라.
Seems like mech, but it's not totally obvious to me yet.
What's not totally obvious?
Mech.
Ah,
Took fast gas at the third, and there was a tank. There's a
아군이
factory.
진호전을 시작했네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네.
Do you switch from melee upgrades after 1-1 to go range with 2-2?
I'm actually playing bio, but yeah, I would swap to from Carapace. So I actually am playing bio. It's just a bit of a slow transition, but these Marines are showing themselves now, so you can stop worrying about that.
영광의 전투를 시작했네. 아군이 교전을 시작했네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 광맥이 고갈됐네. 에너지가 부족하네. 추악한 저그가 진화를 마친 적군이 점막 종양의 고리를 뽑으려고 하네. 그 명령은 따를 수 없네. 광물지대를 다 써버렸네. 아군이 영광의 전투를 시작해받고 있네. 에너지가 더 필요하네. 아군이 도전을 시작했네. 자네의 점막 중량이 정화된 광물이 부족하네. 전투에서 적과 마주쳤네. 불가능한 명령일세. 아군 영광의 전투를 시작했네. 이 저주받은 군락 다른 여왕이 아군이 도전을 시작했네. 전투에서 적과 마주친 종양의 고리를 뽑으려고 하는 기지가 공격하고 있네. 완료. 왕의
That's what I
전투를
meant to say.
시작해 고갈됐네. 자네의 점막 중에
Good old misclick. I meant to only be building tanks and stuff, but occasionally the random Widow Mine is like the actual best unit you could possibly have,
I think I killed almost all my
especially when
rogues.
it's not expected. Yeah, it did crazy, crazy damage there. One of my big focuses has been, rather than dragging it into this late game mass nuke stage, even though I'm good at it, is trying to just finish on 3 base a lot more, and I've had so much success since whenever I do this correctly.
전쟁이 시작된 광물이 모자라네. 아군이 영광의 전투를 시작했네. 광물이 더 필요하네.
Nice.
적이 겁도 없이 우리 기지
And now I have homework. Ba-da-ba-dam.
Yeah, it's actually insane when the Terran really just wants to be like Hellions Reapers poke in, and like there's just little things like those 3 drones rallying out just as my Hellion Reaper poked in, and I just got to like kill 3 drones. At that point was huge. It was like so lucky for me as well that those drones popped out right then. But I think your overlords could be further out initially to see those rotations, and even though that presents your overlords to Viking kills slightly more, I feel like just putting them out like 1/3 of a screen at most, maybe like the distance a Hydra shoots at most further out, I think you just have a few extra seconds of minimap awareness of where those Hellions are coming to, so your queens can always be the greeting party. Because yeah, if your queens can kind of be there as the Hellions and Reapers rotate to a new angle, I feel like you just have you're less having to pull your lings back and readjust them, and it's only if the Hellion player really wants to dive past the queens, and at that point they're being taxed for it. They're losing hit points every single time they do it, and so on.
I'm also kind of heads down looking at my build instead of looking at your stuff as much. But yeah, this was good because you're a little bit less forgiving and showing more of those openings too, which I'm gonna find those out on the ladder anyway. So yeah,
yeah. I always tell the story to my stream of like whenever I used to play Innovation on Korean Ladder, and it was just he'd always kill you with the first Reaper and 6 Hellions, like because the first Reaper would do so much just chipping hit points away, and then the 2 Hellions, and like he'd always do a volley without your queen even getting a hit off. And you're like, these units are the same range. Like, how are you hitting me getting out of there? And he just, yeah, it's fascinating because I get the same experience. If I play against like a Future or a Semper and they're like really focusing on their Hellion Reaper micro or like a Master, and I'm like, oh my freaking god, like I need more queens, I need to be more in position. And it's really interesting. Whereas you have a guy who sits at home with his Hellions the whole time, and it's a lot easier to pull off your opening, I feel.
Yeah, you got ahead in workers in the first 7 minutes. So that should be ironed out pretty well. Once I have a better sense of the different stages of this is when the Hellions can dive and poke and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
My example
it's
is
the seesaw of TVZ.
when you get people talking smack about certain Koreans, like there was someone in my chat the other day saying Hurricane didn't deserve to be as far in GSL as he was, and I played against Hurricane in an online cup, and he beat me in a best of 3 with his first 2 Adepts and an Oracle both times. It's a very humbling experience.
He did the Neeb. I feel like, yeah, the number of times I've seen Neeb beat, like, it's like, okay, second best Zerg in NA, Jon Snow, and Jon Snow's basically dead from the first 2 Adepts in the Oracle as well, and I'm like, oh my god. Like, holy crap. You know, so then, yeah, and then you think about where we are as well. It's like, did you see Marine Lord's tweet a month or 2 ago? And he's like, what the fuck? I get 2 MMR. Like, Cyril gets 2 MMR from beating me or something. Mm-hmm. And then TLO shared a screenshot of him beating me and getting 2 MMR. And he's just like, oh my God, to think that we're just casters compared to Cyril. Like, and I'm just like, yep, that's about right. The gaps are huge, man. It's insane.
Turns out StarCraft is a difficult video game.
Hells to the yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time. This was very
no worries, man.
Refreshing for me. It always gives me a nice, exciting set of things to work on and polish. So much of the game is about ironing out those little details, especially when you're in the GM range. Oftentimes you can just broad stroke and win games against all the Masters 1 players, but you're not going to beat 6K players unless you have a lot of precision. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a nice little piece of content. This will be up on my YouTube. You should chuck it up on yours as well, I would imagine. I think people really enjoy this when we get coached by each other and stuff. So good stuff, man. All right, enjoy singing the rest of your stream. Have a good one.
Yep, you too. Go get him.
Laters, brother.
GG. Sweet. That's some good stuff, yo. I always like our coaching sessions. I have a bunch of notes, too. He was typing a whole bunch. I don't know if you had his stream open as well. But there were different benchmarks, also different questions about how to think through stuff in the matchup. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to like stop memeing about in my games, but it also gives me a really drilled sense of progression for my tryhard time. So if I'm doing tryhard ladder, and I get ZvT, it'll be this. So every ZvT, it'll be about, with very strict precision and discipline, doing this stuff correctly. And if stuff doesn't work out, like if something takes me by surprise or just crushes me and I feel like maybe this build isn't good for that, it's a process of figuring out how to adjust it. So we wouldn't say that I'm now married to this build and I'm gonna die with this build until the end of Legacy of the Void. It's more of a way to create a more clear path from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, where I have more strict and accurate timings that I can memorize, and then use more of my active attention to make those small adjustments. What's the single most important thing you learned? I think a game flow, because one of the things we identified really early on, and I kind of opened with this as the inspiration of it, is I do a bunch of random builds every time, and it's kind of like you're a musician, right? And you know how to play, say for a ZvT, I can play 12 different songs in the opening, where I've played them multiple times in the past, and if the match starts, I could choose to do that one. But there's a very big difference between having 12 songs in your kit, and then as soon as you get on stage, you play one of those 12 songs, as opposed to if you have a concert coming up, and you've been practicing for 3 months with one song. You can knock that shit out of the park. It's going to be very good. It's going to be very accurate. You're going to make very few mistakes, and people are going to be really hyped about it. As opposed to, yeah, I know all this stuff, and I'm just going to get up there, and I'm just going to play one of those. It's not going to be as good. I think regardless of your skill. It's about really finding that level of polish and precision. And that's going to be the difference between mid-GMs, which is where I tend to be if I'm just kind of grinding stream and playing ladder games and stuff, versus if I wanted to set a new personal best MMR for myself, I would need to do this for all 3 of my matchups. We've already done a ZVP, so I think I understand how to progress with precision and polish in ZVP, and now we have ZvT. So I'm going to take some time to practice this, work on it, things like that. Just play like Cyril, how hard can it be? Nice meme. Nice meme.